Hello and welcome to another comedian's interview for my blog A Rich Comic Life. My name is Richard Gill and my blog describes my experiences of watching over 800 comedians and counting from the last 46 years. My guest today is the wonderful comedian Mr. Paul McCaffrey. Yes! Hello!
How are you?
I'm all right. How are you?
Is it rapturous? Yeah, what a welcome. I'm all right, man. All the better for seeing you.
Are you all right, mate?
Yeah. All
good,
right.
Good lad. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
No problem at all.
It's going to be an interview about your comic career.
Yeah.
And we're going to go right back to the start. And can you tell me, please, what inspired you to be a comedian?
I mean, just years of sort of mucking around, really, and kind of always trying to get a laugh. I don't think it really came as a surprise to many people who knew me that comedy was something that I'd started doing. I think whenever anyone asked me, or what you're up to now, I say I'm a comedian. Most people are like, yeah, that sounds about right. Kind of used to muck about at school and all the jobs that I ever had, and just kind of. I have to say I wasn't really a huge, unlike yourself, I was never a huge comedy fan per se.
Right.
Not to the level I am now since I've started doing it. I always loved comedy, obviously, and I always sort of, there were sitcoms that I loved, and there were certain comics but I'd never been to the Edinburgh Festival, for example, or I didn't really go to sort of comedy clubs as much as a lot of people that I know that do comedy do now. So, so that was it really. It was just kind of a natural progression. I just kind of constantly tried to make people laugh and then realised you could actually do it for a living.
Exactly, mate, and by God you have. It's a joy. It's always a joy for me to see your name on a comedy bill.
Oh,
describe your first gig, please. So how did you get into comedy?
Well, so I was living down in Brighton. I trained as an actor.
Right.
I kind of had been. I was living back in Winchester. I ran a pub for a while in London, and for one reason or another, I ended up living back with my parents, and was just very bored, and was just going to the pub all the time, and was just like, I can't keep doing this. So I remembered that at school I had really acting was probably the only thing that I ever really applied myself to and had sort of enjoyed really. So I kind of joined up a local amateur dramatic society and did 2 plays with them, which was just really to keep me out of the pub, to be honest with you, and it kind of worked and I enjoyed it. And then I thought, maybe I should maybe I should sort of look back into sort of taking that up again. I'd enjoyed that, so I applied to a couple of drama schools and I got into one as a post-grad. And I went and did that for a year. I kind of wish I'd done 3 years now, looking back, because I was a bit worried that I was 27 at that point, and I thought, it's a bit late to be taking on a 3-year course. But actually now, at 46, I look back and go like, that would have been nothing. But there we go, you live and learn. Anyway, came out of doing that, got a few little parts in plays and a little music video and a couple of other little bits and pieces of acting. And then I started doing a stand-up course. All of the sort of acting I did, the comedic roles were the ones that interested me, and even the roles that weren't comedic ended up being comedic. I just sort of think I had a kind of natural instinct for finding being funny and finding what was funny in any situation. Just mucking about really. So I started doing this stand-up course. I think his name is Robin Hitchcock. I can't remember. There's a guy that runs a course up in London, and then I had to leave that because I got a part in a play. So I sort of only did the first couple of sessions of that, moved to Brighton, was working in a call centre whilst kind of pursuing the acting, and then someone who I was working in the call centre with had seen that they were running a stand-up comedy course at the Comedia in Brighton and said, you should go and do that. So I went and did that, the Jill Edwards comedy course, which quite a few well-known people have done over the years. And the first gig was the showcase that they have at the end of the course. So all of the friends and families of the people that have kind of been doing the course, I think it was 10 weeks initially, the first course. She runs it, then you can go back and you can do the advanced course, and then you end up graduating. She boots you out into the real world. But at the end of the beginner's course, the aim is to write a 3-minute set, which you then perform at the showcase for collected family and friends in the Comedia in Brighton, which is one of the best
clubs,
lovely club, big club for your first gig, packed, sold out.
Times.
It was great. I sort of perform there now regularly as a kind of professional comic. But certainly, as a for your first gig, turning up to a room with 200 people in it was a bit daunting.
That's terrifying.
Oh my god! I honestly, on the way down there, I was going to phone up and say something had happened, that I couldn't, like there'd been an emergency at home and that I couldn't make it. And I've never experienced nerves like it. It was incredible. The nerves. So I did that, and it went okay. It went okay. It went good. It went good.
So what sort of year was this?
That was 2006.
Right.
I was 31. So and it was just kind of this whole world that opened up to me that I was not aware of existing. At the time. To book gigs, you would go through Time Out, the comedy section in Time Out, and a lot of the listings would have a number there. If you're interested in performing, phone this number between the hours of. It would be like, phone up on Tuesday morning between 9 and 9:30. And if you missed it, you'd have to wait another week before you could phone up. And
wow,
they would put you on for 5 minutes. Some of them were like new act nights where you would just turn up, and it would be predominantly like the acts that were performing. Would make up the audience, and then there were some that were kind of more prestigious, like the Comedy Caf, which I don't think is still. I'm not sure if that had closed before the lockdown or.
Right.
It had certainly moved venues, but they used to have a new act night on a Wednesday, where you would be on with like 10 acts, and then it would kind of be decided on the night who was the overall winner of that night, and then they would get to go back the following week and perform a longer set at the end of the night for like 50 quid or something. There was a few nights that ran like that. So I was living in Brighton at the time, and had a full-time job in the call centre, so I would quite often finish work at 5, jump on the train up to London, do a gig for no money in the back room of a pub somewhere, and then I would get the train back, probably get back to Brighton at sort of like 1, go to sleep, get up, and it wasn't uncommon at that one time for me to be doing that every night of the week. Sort of I'd sleep on the train.
It's a tough slog, but it gives you the experience, and the more you do, the better you are at doing it. I've supported many a new comedian going to, as a member of the audience, these club comedy nights, and watch them sit there and watch them do 5 minutes. I once sat in the audience watching my friend do 20 gigs just to get him going, and I was sick of laughing in all the right places.
I know. Well, that's it. It sort of becomes, you get sick of sort of saying it in all the right places after a while. But it's like you say, there's no substitute for that kind of experience early on, to sort of just be doing it as many times as possible. And I was quite lucky in as much as I think I got to an acceptable level quite quickly. I didn't have that many really bad gigs. I mean, obviously there was the odd sort of everyone dies, and that can still happen now, but I mean, I'd say really I was kind of, certainly to new act standards, I was fairly competent quite quickly. And
I think certainly whenever I see you, that shines through. You seem to be very, very engaging on stage. You're very good with an audience. You seem to make comedy out of anything funny, and that is a great skill to have and to build up through experience.
Thank you. I don't know whether, I think, as I say, I sort of ran a pub, I worked behind a lot of bars, I did a lot of telesales. I've had a lot of jobs where I am talking to members of the public. So I think that kind of definitely helped me. Even when I was working behind the bar, I'd always be known as the funny guy behind the bar. So that kind of thing. And it was a busy it was in London where there was a capacity of 250, so it was a busy Saturday night bar.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, I think I definitely had a few things going for me, and obviously the acting, where I really like for the first couple of years, I absolutely loved it. I couldn't get enough of it. Wanted to gig all the time. Still do to a certain degree. Obviously, the travelling gets you down a little bit when you've been going a while, and you get sort of. But I do really enjoy the performing, and always have done. And
it's interesting that you started off in amateur dramatics, because I've done a bit of that myself. I used to be a civil servant.
Yeah.
And they had like an amateur dramatic group there, and it was really just a drinking club. But they once said to me, who's your favourite script writer? And I said Neil Simon. He writes brilliant plays. And we did The Odd Couple, and I was Oscar, and I played him. Oscar the Grouch Felix, and Oscar it is, and they're forced to live together because they're both two divorcees, and they get on each other's nerves. And of course, I was the slob. I was perfectly cast, and I did it with a Cumbrian accent, and it was American to all that sort of thing. But it was the best feeling to get it right. But of course, it was saying somebody else's words. You were acting as opposed to writing
honestly,
your own stuff.
It's such a different skill. It's such a different discipline, and it's obviously there's the whole sort of. I really want to act still. I really do hope that that's something that I will achieve in my comedy career, is to sort of like do some acting, but. It's a completely different skill, kind of to the freedom that you're allowed, and also, just I am with, when I sort of write a routine, a stand-up comedy routine, I am with that from its conception right through to its natural conclusion whenever I stop doing it, or if I've been lucky enough to do stand-up on television a few times, when you sort of get to do it on TV, you go like, I have molded that, and I have kind of every sort of part of that has come from me, and so you're not having to sort of pretend to be someone else. Obviously, your stand-up persona is a heightened version of yourself, or whatever, or certain bits are turned up. But when you're having to say something as if you are actually that person, I have the utmost respect when I see someone acting well. I think it's I think it's one of those jobs that people sort of look at and go like, oh, anyone could do that, and you go like, no, they couldn't.
No.
When you've tried to do it, and then you see someone doing it well, you realise how hard it is. I mean, it's the same with stand-up. I've been doing this a good while now, and there are sort of certain times where I go like, I think anyone could do this, and then you see someone who perhaps isn't quite as competent doing it, and you go like, it's not everyone can do it, and it's yes, I'm just sort of guess I'm lucky,
very true,
lucky that I can.
Very, very true. So when you're doing your act, what do you like to talk about on stage?
Well, it has to be. I think it always has to be something that's based in it's true. Right. My favourite type of comedy is when I watch someone and I can say with some certainty that a version of whatever it is they're talking about has happened.
Yeah.
Like you go like, even if it's been kind of tweaked to kind of fit, the kind of the routine or whatever, it's been embellished, but you go like, some this has happened, or something like this has happened. And I think, all of my bits, if I look back, there's a couple of things where I might have sort of seen something and that's made me think, oh, that's but on the whole, it's all truthful stuff, things that kind of bewilder me, things that have annoyed me. I don't know really. Some things just happen, and you just didn't. I just instantly go that will work as stand up. And sometimes I'll say something to someone, they go, "Oh, you should do that as stand up." And I don't know really. It's things that annoy me really. I think.
Well, I was going to say what's wonderful to watch is when you get annoyed, you seem to get funnier.
It's
just the way you do it. It's hysterical to watch.
Well, thanks very much. Yes, and again, I suppose that's come from years of sort of, yeah. I think there is, without sounding like a wanker, it is something that does come kind of naturally to me. That sort of being funny whilst being annoyed.
Yeah.
Like sort of if someone's done something.
It's like
annoying,
irritable.
Yeah, in a group
Yeah.
of friends. He's an idiot. Like, who does that? And it's that kind of thing. And that's always been something that has entertained friends or something when, like, yeah, I'll get in trouble at work and then be reporting it back to everyone. Like, and then he did, and then people are just like, oh, you crack. Yes. So,
Brilliant. You always make me consistently laugh out loud whenever I see you. I don't know what it is, but I've been
Funny
crying
face, I
at
think,
your
is a-
routines, mate. I really have. Tell me about your writing process and where you get your ideas from.
Well, again, as I say, it just sort of varies from
Yeah.
sort of bit to bit, really. Sometimes something will happen, and for example, yeah, just I got a routine about getting 3 parking tickets, and I mean, it actually happened, and you just sort of straight away just go like, oh, I don't know how this is, but this will end up being a routine. Some things just happen and you go like, I just know that this will end up being stand-up. And then some bits take a lot of work to get them to the point where, I've had bits that have taken years to get them to the point where I'm happy. I've had bits that I've stopped doing. I've had, routines that I've written for Edinburgh, and then, I've kind of got to the end of Edinburgh and thought, well, I'm never doing that again. Then someone has mentioned it a couple of years down the line. Hayley Ellis, brilliant comic, and friend of mine said, I used to love that Take Me Out bit. It was a bit that I'd had in an Edinburgh show.
Classic.
I'd completely forgotten about it. I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that bit. I might try that tonight. So I did it. And then it was from that point I kind of built it, and someone might give you a line, a comic might go, that would be funny. You go, oh, that's good. Yeah. Not always. Sometimes people will give you a line and you're like, what the fuck are you talking about? But often sort of comics will give you like that. The parking ticket bit. That it was just me moaning about getting 3 parking tickets, which was getting laughs. It was to a point. And then Brian Lacey, I don't even know if he does comedy anymore. He's sort of involved with the UFC. I don't know if you ever saw Brian Lacey. He was great.
I've heard of him, yeah.
You should do sort of songs about kind of stuff that happened in the gig.
Yeah.
Very, very good. But he texted me after a gig where I've been doing an early sort of draft of that routine. And he said, oh, I've thought of an ending for that bit. And I was thinking, oh, God, here we go. So I phoned him the next day thinking, what's this going to be? And then he said it, and I was like, and it was... Yeah, straight. As soon as he said it, I was like, oh, mate, thank you. It was so obvious, and I was gutted that I hadn't thought of it. So, yes, to answer your question, the short answer, it varies from bit to bit, really. Some things come fairly fully formed. Other bits take a little bit more work. Quite often I'll sort of sit down. If I'm writing an Edinburgh show, I'll be sat down at the computer sort of thinking about stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I'm out walking around, it will kind of occur like, that will work, And I think I've heard a few people saying the same thing, that, you kind of sit at your laptop and then the work sort of takes place when you're kind of going about your business later on in the day. The ideas, your subconscious starts kicking in and throwing out sort of bits to you. But
your Take Me Out routine is absolutely priceless, I have to say.
Thank you. It's probably
really
the longest
is.
bit I've ever had.
It was hysterical when first time I heard it. You've supported, amongst others, Sean Locke and Kevin Bridges on tour. Describe these experiences for me. What was it like supporting them?
Absolutely incredible on both counts. 2 of my favourite comedians. Just a real honour and a privilege to get to sort of, what on every level, I was playing in rooms that I would, the likes of which I'd never played in before. Both different, Kevin's was more sort of arenas, so playing arenas, it was like
thousands.
Van Halen or something, incredible,
daunting.
It was pretty hairy, the first one, definitely, and but that was a great experience. Obviously with Sean's, it was more kind of the kind of bigger theatres. But you know, I would watch them both every night. It was I definitely felt like at the end of both of those tours, when I went back out into the clubs, I was much better for it.
Brilliant,
There was just, you know, they're both very generous and would watch me and would give me sort of tips and sort
That's
of say, "Oh,
great.
you thought about this bit?" And certainly kind of like the performance side of things in those bigger rooms, you know, they would both say, "Oh, just stuff like to be mindful of. You've got a bit more time than you think you have."
Yeah.
Perhaps like, you know, on nights where I was rushed, it's like, "Oh, don't, you know, take your time." Just watching how they would change little bits, no bits. Never was 1-2 shows, if that's the right. It were 1 shows the same with those two.
Yeah.
Something would always be different, and it was just kind of, they were constantly searching and trying to improve, and you know, changing orders and sort of changing where bits came, and just constantly trying to sort of just constantly working. It was never finished, and it was I mean, just two of the best comedians in the country.
They are, and
You know.
again, it's more experience for you. You know, the
It's just
more you
incredible.
do.
Ah, yeah, and it was. I mean, it was like getting to train with the England team. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's not an exaggeration. That is the level you are operating at, or you are performing with, and
Yeah.
the absolute peak of
it.
the game. Yeah.
You mentioned before about getting nervous on stage.
Mm.
Do you still get nerves to this day, and how do you cope with them if you do?
I've had a real problem over the years with, you know, nerves when there is someone in to watch me that could give me an opportunity. That is something that I still, you know, I've had gigs where I've known someone is there to watch me for a possible TV gig or something,
Right.
and I freeze up, and then, you know, quite often the next night I'll be in the middle of nowhere in a gig that where it matters not, you know, not a jot, and I'll end up doing really well there and be like, why didn't I do that last night? But
frustrating, but you
it's
know,
frustrating.
Again, you're learning as you're going along, and you won't make the
Yes.
same mistake again.
I
hopefully.
hope so, yeah. I mean, I sort of used to get really nervous before gigs. I used to get sick. I retch quite a lot and have those sort of physical responses. I still do get nervous, like, you know, but not like that. You know, I can, you know, I can be mid-conversation at the backstage at the Comedy Store, for example, and my name will get called, and I'll walk on. I don't, you know, but I pace a lot before a gig. But no, I don't get nervous really on a you know, normal gig like I used to.
But I mean, that's the reason why I write this blog.
Yeah.
I regard you all as heroes, because you have to go out there and entertain an audience, and it can be the toughest thing in the world, especially if you get a very difficult audience.
Yeah.
But you're very good at running out there and going, right, you're mine, I'm going to make you laugh before you leave. And every time I've seen you, you've done it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think. Well, I don't know. It feels like it's been so long since I've done it. I can't really remember. But yeah, I'll take your word for it. And thank you very much.
It's true. It's true.
I mean, I think I'm quite, as I say, you know, I am quite personable, and I do like chatting to people. It annoys, you know, my wife and friends of mine take the mickey. Like, I'm always trying to crack jokes when I'm out in, you know, with waiting staff or in a shop or whatever, you know.
But that's great as well, because you've got the audience banter as well, you see.
Yeah, and I like that, you know. I think Edinburgh's taught me, you know, when you turn up on a wet Wednesday in Edinburgh and there's sort of 15 people in, and they're not kind of perhaps as responsive. You can tell quite early on in Edinburgh sometimes. You walk out, you're like, hey, please give a round of applause to Paul McCaffrey, and it's just like... So, you know, you kind of learn that maybe it's not going to be an easy gig that night, and that you might not be, you know, be able... There are two schools of thoughts for that. Some people would just go out and do the show.
Yeah.
I'd probably be more inclined to sort of have a bit of a chat and just try and sort of put a little bit of something into the room myself. But that's just, you know, that's just the way I kind of... But maybe I'm a coward. I just find it easy. I just find it easier to sort of... sometimes just give give the audience a little bit of a kind of metaphorical sort of nudge in the right direction by just like, oh, hello, mate, you know, whatever, and then sort of.
Well, you're getting them on your side as well, so you can then say what you like.
Yes. But yeah, so I've forgotten what the original question was.
It was, do you get nervous like I am now?
No. Yeah. So no. To cut the short answer is not really.
No.
But, you know, and obviously when I was doing those big rooms with Kevin and you know, and obviously with Sean, and again, you know, certainly early on when I was performing in front of those guys, you want them to think you're good, and that's a different level of nerves. I
can imagine.
When you know we did Glasgow and we were doing the arena there, and it's 12,000 people.
Wow, that's amazing.
It's absolutely
was that
and if you stop and think about that for too long, you wouldn't. You know, sometimes it's a bit like, you know, when something sort of traumatic happens, and then you the sort of adrenaline gets you through, and then you think afterwards, God, that could have been really nasty. Like when you have a near miss in a car, it's almost a bit like when we did not Belfast, when we did Dublin with Kevin, we did the arena there, and so we did 5 nights, and then the night after we were there, U2 were on.
Wow.
So they moved into the arena, and we had a day off, so we went and watched U2 in the arena the night after we'd been on there, and I was thinking, God, I'm glad I'm watching this after I've been up there and not before. Because you don't want to be watching like the biggest rock band in the world and think, I've got to get up there tomorrow and start doing like routines about supermarket queues or whatever. It's
oh, brilliant.
But yeah, so sometimes, and there are sometimes when you turn up to a club and I'll watch an act and then I'll look around and I go, God, I've got to get up there, and you know, I'll just have a moment of clarity where I think, how on earth have I got to the point where this is what I've signed up to do 5 nights a week, you know? And obviously there are nights when you're just not, I mean, there are nights when I don't want to talk to anyone, let alone 250 people in Birmingham. You know, you just, that's just nature, isn't it? We just go, oh, God, I'm not in the mood.
It reminds me of the story. I was at the Edinburgh Fringe one year, and there was I was with a friend of mine who was a review. He had to review the comedian. And we're in a tiny room. There was 3 people in the room. There was me, my mate, and a drunk Scotsman in the front row. And the comedian bounded on, and he went, "Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, it's all right. There's only 3 of you. It's all right. Let me buy you a drink for coming along, and thank you so much." And all the rest of it. And the bloke in the front row went, "No, I've paid me £6. I want the hour," and he had to complete the show.
Oh no!
So the show must go on, you know. So
yeah, I mean, well, I think I've definitely got to the point now. I think the days for me of doing single-figure Edinburgh shows, I just,
of course,
you know,
of course.
Not I'm saying, you know, certainly midweek in Edinburgh, I'm not paying to a huge amount of people, but I think now I'd they go, "You sold 8." I'll be like, oh, I'm not doing. Sorry, just give me a refund. I'm not.
No.
I think, you know, it's hard to, because I can remember the first year that I did. No, sorry, the second year that I did a solo show.
Yeah.
Which was 2012, which was probably my favourite Edinburgh show, I think. It was called Pills, Thrills and Belly Laughs.
Yeah.
And it was about me and a couple of friends going to a festival kind of 20 years after we'd been to one before. It was the kind of loose sort of thread of the thing. And it was all about festivals, and it was stuff I was interested in. And it had a beginning, it had an ending, and it was probably the most complete show that I'd written, even on a quiet night. The ending sort of tied everything up in a way. It was just kind of, what it was I drew parallels between the end of Point Break and me going to see the Stone Roses reunion. So it was kind of like I acted out the end of Point Break, where Keanu Reeves' character finds Patrick Swayze's character at that 50-year wave, doesn't he? And he sort of lets him go, you know, he ain't coming back or whatever. So I sort of talked about that, and then I had this whole thing, which was me going to the Stone Roses. I was going, if that was the end of my film, that's where they'd find me. And it was like, and I had all, and so even on a night where I basically died on my arse for 50 minutes, the ending was sort of like good enough that people would go, oh, like, oh, it all tried to, you know. And I think it's incredible how the value of that in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
You don't realise how useful it is. And actually, the last one I did, which you came to see, Lemon, it ended with a video, which also had callbacks in it.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, it really does get you through those nights where you go like, oh, then they might not be giving me the laughs that I want, but at least when it all comes sort of full circle at the end, they're not going to feel like they've wasted their time.
Brilliant.
So, but yes, sorry, my point is, God, I'm waffling tonight.
You're all right, mate. No worries.
That year in Edinburgh, it was the year of the Olympics. I think ticket sales were down anyway.
Yeah.
It was only my second one. No one knew, not that I'm saying anyone knows who I am now, but so I was completely unknown then. I've certainly been going to Edinburgh enough now where I do all right. I made money for the first time this year, and so that's great.
Yeah.
But like, there was 3 nights in a row where I had 8 in there, and on the third night, I was just to my then agent. I was like, I want to go home. I don't want to do this anymore. I've written this show, and I'm really proud of it. And it's just, and it got a really nice review off Chortle on the first day.
Brilliant.
It was the only, Chortle came in and I was like, brilliant, we're off. This is like everyone does in Edinburgh, unless you are one of the people that it does happen for. But you got to go, right, this could be the year. I'm out, and I really felt like I had a good show. And then, when it's just so disheartening.
I've no doubt it must be awful, because you've spent so much time working on it. You think it's good, and it is good, but you've only got the small number of people in there who appreciate it. Or not, as the case may be.
Exactly, and there's just there's with the greatest will in the world, and that week I could still remember it well, because it was a year where I wasn't drinking, so I kind of like have a clear memory of it.
Yeah.
And I could just remember sort of being so excited, and I'd never find out how many I had in, and then the first night I went out and there was only 8 in, and it was fun, to be honest with you. I kind of had this big entrance. I had a smoke machine. I was coming out to this. It was an Andrew Weatherall remix of "Come Home" by James. Strobe light, and I came out with a tambourine. It was kind of like this. So actually, it kind of worked quite well when there wasn't many people in. I'm like, well, that was a bit over the top for 8 people, and it was kind of. You don't mind one night when there's 8 people there, you're sort of having a bit of a laugh and a joke about how few there was in. And then the second night, and then by the third night, you're like, what is this just going to be a month-long exercise in making it feel, like it's not awkward for everyone, myself included, when there's 8 people in the room? You're just like, this isn't what I've signed up for.
No.
And so, I forgot again. Sorry, I've completely forgotten what the point was.
No. It's just. We were talking about being nervous on stage, and I'm moving on to whatever the magic ingredient is for being a great comedian. I think you've got it. I genuinely mean that, mate.
Thank you.
How do you remember all your routines? Do you have a way of remembering them? Do you write them down? Do you practice them?
I mean, I will have a sort of, like if I'm writing an Edinburgh show, for example, I will kind of go on stage at previews with kind of quite detailed set lists. So it'll be a set list that will kind of have. It won't be a script exactly, but it will be halfway between a set list and a script.
Right.
So a very detailed set list. So and then what I would look to do is just to sort of get that less and less detailed as time goes on, to the point where even initially, and this is something that I learned at drama school from someone, where they would remember their lines when they were learning lines. What they'd look to do is get to the point like a week or so before the show would go up, where they'd have their lines, but it would just be the first letter of each word.
Right.
So you kind of, that's like an exercise memory where you're prompting yourself.
Yeah.
And so, I would have a set list. I mean, I have to say, actually, in Edinburgh nowadays, I'm not opposed to having a set list somewhere on stage just as a safety blanket, because it doesn't happen.
No.
But like, I think if I, what's the point in not having that there if I did dry one night and then,
Well, I find it absolutely staggering how comedians remember the routines and the jokes. I mean, the classic one that comes to mind is Ken Dodd. He's on stage for about 6 hours, remembering all these gags as he goes along. I once saw Ken Dodd in Crewe, and I got into an argument with him. It was hilarious. He came on and he said he was doing a routine about newspapers, and he said, "What's the newspaper in Crewe called?" And there was two old women behind me, and they yelled the Chronicle. And I turned around and went, no, it's not the Chronicle, it's the Mail. And I argued with them for about 5 minutes, and then he looked at me and he said, "Where are you from, sir?" I said, "Carlisle." He said, "Oh, well, you won't know what the newspaper is in Crewe. I'll see you on Sunday. That's where I'm playing next."
Oh, no way.
And at the end of it, he just needed someone in the audience to chat to, and he gave us a thumbs up.
Amazing.
He was extraordinary at remembering it all, and it got me into thinking, with all the comedians I've seen, how you remember it all is just amazing.
The thing is, it's like, to go back, obviously we were sort of talking about acting earlier on, and the discipline of that is, again, I just find it extraordinary, because you're not only having to learn your lines, you're having to learn everyone else's lines, you're having to learn your cues, it's and it's also, when you get given a part in a play, the play is already written, right? So when I write an Edinburgh show or a routine, I'm starting from scratch and I'm building it from the ground up. So, it kind of, I've got a lot more time and I'm thinking about it a lot more than I would be if in my experience, certainly at drama school when we did plays, we'd have a 2-week rehearsal period. You get given the part, you get given the play. That really is just a memory exercise, on top of obviously you having to remember what you're doing in each scene, what you want, who your character is, and all the rest of it. Whereas with the stand-up, I kind of will have an idea for a routine. I'll try it out at a new material night, probably a short version of it. Like for example, in my last Edinburgh show, I had a Huawei phone. They were talking about people spying on people who had these Huawei phones. That was a thing. They were saying, "Who's going to be spying on me?" What do I want to know? So I might just throw that out initially, and then if that gets a laugh, like the idea of what it is, I'll go, right, that's worth sort of working on.
Yeah. And
then I'll sort of like add a bit to it, and then I might take bits away, and but I'm kind of constantly doing new material nights when I'm running up to an Edinburgh show. So, by the time I sort of go to Edinburgh, I might have done a bit 40 or 50 times.
Right. So so you know whether or not it's going to work.
Well, also there's just the muscle memory of saying it over and over again, But it, when only speaking for myself here, but when I go to Edinburgh, on the first couple of days, I'm worried about just remembering it all. You go like, "Oh God, I'm going to remember a whole hour," and then by the end of it, you're sick to death of sort of quite quickly. It is, and
you have to run on as though it's your first time.
Remember. Exactly. There's all of that, but then there's the thought of remembering an hour. When I first sort of started out, I was like, I'll never be able to do that, and I've kind of
Let's talk more about Edinburgh. What was your first Edinburgh Fringe like? What year was it?
Well, I went just when I'd sort of first started doing comedy. When I started doing the course, my friend got married in Edinburgh,
right?
And so I went up a couple of days early and sort of thought I'll go and check out some shows. I've never been to the Edinburgh Festival before. It blew my mind the first time I saw it. Just incredible. I think it's quite nice that we've had this sort of forced break from it, because I hope that I will sort of go back there with that kind of renewed excitement.
Yeah.
I don't know whether it will happen this year. I certainly don't think I'll go, because
I'm the same. I've sort of like written this year off, so hopefully we'll have a great 2022.
Yes, I think the feeling is that it will happen in some shape or form this year.
Yeah, it might be all online.
Yeah, who knows? But
Leicester did it quite well.
Yes. And so, I went to see a couple of mixed bill shows. I went to see sort of what did I go and see when I was up there that year? I saw like a show in that Upside Down Cow with Jason Manford hosting.
Yeah, brilliant.
It was just amazing. And then so I went back the next year and did like a couple of. Did I go back what year did I did it? 2008. I went up with two of the people that I'd done the course with.
Right.
And we sort of split an hour between the three of us on the Free Fringe just for like a week.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I did Big Value, which is obviously like it's a mixed bill show that you get invited to do, or you audition for, where you go up, and that's sort of what that's what got me to the point where I had a 20-minute set that I could go and do in a club.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that was really good. Then I did Triple A the year after, and then I did my first solo show in 2011, which was called Saying Something Stupid. So I kind of knew what Edinburgh was about by that point. But I do wish I'd waited to do my first solo show. I will say that. I kind of feel
Why
like
is that?
I just feel like I could have done a much better job of it if I'd have just left it a couple of years. I kind of just hashed something together. I wish my second show had been my first show.
What was your second show?
Second show was the one that I was saying about Pills, Thrills and Belly Laughs.
Oh, yes,
and that was kind of, you know, I really wish I kind of had it the other way for a lot of people. A lot of people say that they found their second show. I think maybe I just didn't work hard enough on my first show, and I actually did work harder on my second show.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah,
it is an incredible experience. I've been very lucky to go. My first one was 2005.
Yeah.
And I go for a week in mid-August, and I see about 50 shows, and
Wow.
I just can't get enough of it. And the first time I saw you do your solo show, I have a wonderful photograph of bumping into you outside the Laughing Horse at the Counting House, where you were flyering, and I've never seen anyone look so happy that I was there.
Oh,
and
man, that's the one night of the run that I look forward to. When you're in the audience.
You're very kind.
No,
The show was Suburban Legend,
Yeah.
and I thought, this is just amazing. It was just laugh. We saw that, and then we saw Lemon, as you mentioned before, the
Yes.
Underbelly. And again, just wonderful to watch. You've appeared on radio and television, most notably on Live at the Apollo, where you did an excellent set.
Oh, thank you.
Tell me about the differences of appearing on TV to live stand-up.
Well, I think there's definitely a kind of. I've not done much of it. I think I've been on 3 stand-up shows. So I did Stand Up Central, Russell Howard's Good News, and Live at the Apollo.
Right.
I think there's definitely a skill to it. You know, I just sort of did it a gig. I was very lucky when I did Live at the Apollo that I'd done The Room. I think it was the 10th time that I performed there, because I'd done it with Sean Locke and Kevin.
Yeah,
supporting them on their tour. So I kind of was used to The Room. But I think, you know, it's less about the gig and more about kind of like, it's interesting. I think you could probably do really well at a stand-up gig that's being filmed for TV, and someone could do not as well, but the person that did not as well would translate better on television.
I see.
I don't know. It's I can't quite.
It's
put my
interesting
finger on what it is, but
because when I see stand-up comedians live, they seem to be a bit restricted when I see them on TV. I don't know whether that's their own series or what, but it's interesting because I don't know whether there are any restrictions on television. Do they let you say what you like?
Sort of, no. Obviously, everything would be sort of checked before you do it. Like, they tend to sort of, you know, the producer will come and watch you at a gig. And you would do the set that you're going to do, and they tell you, we'll, you know, fact check stuff, or you can't say that, that's libelous, or you can't, you know, obviously swearing is swearing for something like BBC. You know, BBC is a big thing, so I've kind of but beyond that, you know,
you can do what you like.
I think so.
What's your ambition as a comedian? Would you like to be on television more? Would you like your own quiz show? Would you like your own sitcom?
I don't think I'd like my own quiz show. Yeah, sitcom is definitely sort of an ambition of mine. I'd like to do more stand-up on television, definitely. I would like a special on some platform. Netflix,
deservedly so,
Thank you. I feel like that's sort of something that I would like to get to eventually. I'd like to just keep, I want to keep improving as a stand-up. I feel like, yeah, all of it really. I'd like to do my own tours to sort of decent sort of sizes, maybe small theatres. Yes.
Brilliant. Well, I'm sure you will. We're all living in strange times. It's been very weird. How have you found online gigs as opposed to live stand-up?
I've actually really enjoyed them, I have to say. It's a bit weird when they finish and you're just on your own in your house. I don't really like that aspect of it. But obviously I've seen you at various ones over the sort of pandemic, and certainly people like James Gill of the amazing Always Be Comedy quite quickly figured out what makes a good online gig, so that's always fun to do.
I'm very privileged to be in the front row. It's for them. It's
incredible. It's a privilege to have you there. It's so good to have that feedback, and I think really they're pretty sort of they're pretty much like actual gigs really nowadays. Obviously it is the form is different, and there are certain things I've kind of learned that work better for me, like leaning right into the camera. I find helps me. Right. I don't know why, but I just find like the closer I get, the kind of more I get out of it. But yeah, no, I've actually really enjoyed them. I've done quite a few actually now, and
it's great because just the other week I saw you do your Confident Crow gig.
Yes.
That was fantastic.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Absolute made for it, my friend. You really were. You. But there's not just Always Be Comedy. I go to the Return of the Crack, Jarlath Regan's
one. I've done that one. That's
great. I go to
Sean
Sean James one, Happy Mondays gig.
I haven't done that one.
There are two or three that are really, really good at getting the online experience just right. The first time I went to them, there was no audio in them, and of course with my laugh, I was just sitting there laughing in silence at four walls, and I thought,
it's just nice that people are, it's great that people are able to come together in that way and have that sort of collective experience. Certainly, I was running open air gigs during the lockdowns last sort of summer, July through sort of October, and the appetite for people to come together and have that sort of experience, I think it's gonna be amazing when it does open
back up. When it comes back, it'll be amazing. I mean I do really miss live stand-up. I miss having a few beers and then really belly laughing at a comedy gig somewhere like Headliners or Soho Theatre or the Bedford at Balham. There are so many good venues. Who are your favourite comedians, past and present?
Okay, well, I mean, I really like, obviously, we mentioned Kevin and Sean Lott, they're sort of two of my absolute favourites. I always really liked a lot of the kind of more mainstream guys, really. Peter Kay, I absolutely loved.
Just fantastic.
Yeah, brilliant. Those first few DVDs.
I was very lucky to see him on a bill of 5 acts in Manchester well before he was famous, and he was fourth on stage, and I laughed so hard at him I missed the 5th act. And I said to my mate, he's going to be a superstar. And just watching him develop has been incredible. Yeah, he's such a funny man.
I like a lot of those sort of, the people that are sort of naturally funny, but I really like Don Rickles. Actually,
yeah, he's brilliant. That's a great shout.
Yeah, he's someone that I sort of periodically will kind of like, I might watch some Don Rickles roast, roasting Frank Sinatra or Ronald Reagan or whoever it is.
Yeah, superb. Carry on, yeah.
Well, no, just there's quite a lot of the American sort of people that I like. Chris Rock, I think is phenomenal. There's a guy called Sebastian Maniscalco that I've been over to America a few times. I've not done comedy over there, but that's something that I certainly would like to do at some point. But every time I've been to New York a few times, and every time we've watched comedy there. We've been to the Comedy Cellar, and then we went to LA and we went to the LA Store. And
brilliant.
On a Tuesday night, they have like 16 acts. And I mean, it's pretty much every act that comes on, you go like, I've seen him in a film. It was just like Joe Rogan, David Spade, incredible. And then this guy came on called Sebastian Maniscalco, who I'd never heard of. I think David Spade brought him on. It was like, oh, this, you know, blah, blah, blah. Like they all do. You know, they're all going, this guy's a friend of mine, he's a great comedian. They sort of top and tail it, so they don't have an MC. Like the last act brings on the next act. So this guy come on, Sebastian Maniscalco, and he was just doing a routine about the homeless in LA. I don't know if you've been there, but like they're all living in tents. You know, it's crazy out there.
Right.
There's just tents everywhere. He was just doing this routine about how kind of like well equipped some of these homeless people are. He's going, they got like coffee machines. He was sort of acting out them walking around with a cappuccino. He's got mopeds. He's got like, they got better Wi-Fi than I have. But it was just so well executed, and it was just such a funny thing. I'd never seen this guy, and I was with my wife. I was like, this guy's going to be huge. And then I went back that night and Googled him, like, and the following weekend he was doing 5 sold-out nights at Madison Square Garden.
Wow.
I was like, all right, okay,
Wow.
yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, so he's big. He was in The Irishman. He's in Green Book. But I really like him. He really kind of appeals to my sort of sense of humour. Again, it's that kind of like. All of his shows are called stuff like, what's wrong with these people and aren't you embarrassed? And it's all very much like, aren't you embarrassed? He sort of talks about people turning up in shorts to the airport. So I really like him, yeah.
Brilliant.
He's probably my current favourite, actually.
Brilliant. The reason why I asked the question is that in my blog there's a section called The Ones That Got Away. And,
right, yeah.
I've written 25 of them who I would have loved to have seen, and they've either passed on or I just haven't had a chance to see.
Okay.
And you're right about people like Peter Kay or Eric Morecambe or Tommy Cooper, who there's something more there that just makes you laugh without them doing anything. We were very, very fortunate to see Tommy Cooper and Les Dawson in the same year. Les Dawson I absolutely love. And when we saw Tommy Cooper, the curtains opened and there was nothing on stage but a bed, and he's lying on it. And and one woman in the crowd is laughing, and it trickles round, so everybody's crying with laughter. And after about 5 minutes, he just pops his head up and he goes, "What? Has somebody come on?"
Amazing. Where was
that? and so to have seen that in the 70s. That's where the love of it came from. But I would have loved to have seen Morecambe and Wise. They're the reason why I do the blog. I just find Eric Morecambe was just hilarious.
Yeah, I kind of like, obviously, usually I'm out working on Saturday night. But the last couple of weeks we've been watching Antideck, who I think they're brilliant.
They're very good at what they do. There's no doubt.
Absolutely, yeah. Particularly Deck, actually. I think he's got that sort of warmth, and I think they're brilliant. But they started having a musical guest at the end where they're kind of mucking around while the musical act is doing their song straight, and I'm like, oh, yeah, that's kind of Morecambe and Wise, isn't it?
You can see them nicking ideas. Yeah. Like me, do you go to a lot of comedy gigs as a member of the audience?
Not really, no. I'll kind of go and see. I went to see Bill Burr at the Albert Hall. I went to see Chris Rock at Wembley. I kind of normally I'm working so much that I think if
you're all comedied out.
If I announced I was going out to watch a comedian, I don't think that would get green lit.
If you're on a comedy bill, do you stay and watch the rest of the comedians?
I'll always watch. I always watch comments, and I always have done. It amazes me actually when new acts don't stick around and watch the headliners.
Exactly. Because
when I first started doing it, I was like, God, this is amazing. Get to watch the show as well. I don't know why anyone wouldn't do that, but
no. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say? Where can people find you on social media? Have you got any online gigs coming up or any podcasts?
Well, I do a podcast with Sean Walsh called What's Upset You Now. And we when does this go out?
It'll be the end of May.
End of May. So that is we've started to do that with guests. We've got some amazing guests. Jack D, Rob Beckett, kind of. So that you can listen to on all the usual platforms. And I don't know, hopefully by the time you hear this, I'll be back in my natural habitat, which is a comedy club.
You do a podcast with George Lewis as well.
Oh yes,
don't
the
you?
Brit podcast. Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
whether the new series of that, but that's all there to listen to. Yeah, where we interview people from the '90s music scene. We've had some amazing guests on that as well. Peter Hook, Clint
Wow.
Boone,
Yeah.
Rowetta from the Happy Mondays, Bez talking about his. So yeah,
I've listened to a few. They're brilliant. They really are.
Oh, thank you very much. Cheers. Yeah, so there's Instagram. I've got stand-up clips on there, and hoping to add to that when we're back in the real world. But yeah.
Well, my friend, it's been an absolute pleasure. I could talk to you
Likewise.
all night.
Yeah.
I really could.
Brilliant.
And I wish you every success, every future
Thank you so
success.
much.
And I can't wait to see you live again soon or
I
online.
can't wait to see you. Yeah, absolutely.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.